The spring of 1944 painted a stark picture of contrasts across the Atlantic. In the bombed-out cities of Germany, families scraped by on meager daily rations that barely reached 1,800 calories, while electricity flickered unreliably through darkened villages. Air raid sirens wailed as civilians huddled in basement shelters, wondering when the next wave of Allied bombers would thunder overhead. Yet thousands of miles away, in the vast expanse of the American heartland, German soldiers who had been captured on distant battlefields found themselves living in conditions that defied everything they had been taught to believe about their enemies. These 425,000 German prisoners of war, transported from the smoking ruins of North Africa, Sicily, and Normandy, discovered in America that contradicted every piece of Nazi propaganda they had absorbed. They sat down to meals featuring generous portions of fresh meat and white bread, so abundant that many couldn't finish what was placed before them. They flicked light switches in American barracks that never failed to illuminate their quarters, a luxury that had become a distant memory for their families back home. In camps scattered across Texas and Kansas, these former soldiers played football under floodlights and attended evening concerts performed by their fellow prisoners, living a reality that seemed impossible according to everything the Nazi regime had taught them about democratic weakness and American decadence. The transformation began the moment these men stepped off transport ships in New York Harbor and climbed aboard Pullman train cars that many would later describe as more luxurious than any transportation they had ever experienced. As they gazed out windows at the American countryside, they witnessed electric lights blazing from farmhouse windows, even in the most remote rural areas, a sight that challenged their understanding of what was possible in a democratic society. The systematic nature of their amazement unfolded with each passing mile, as they encountered a material prosperity that Nazi ideology had insisted could never exist under democratic governance. Upon arrival at their designated camps, German prisoners who had grown up in cramped quarters without basic amenities found themselves in facilities equipped with hot showers, flush toilets, and centralized heating systems. Many had never experienced running water in their own homes, yet here they were, enjoying amenities that exceeded not only their military experience, but their entire civilian upbringing. Unteroffizier Wolfgang Göring, captured at Normandy, captured this bewilderment in a letter to his family in Bremen. The Americans feed us 3 times daily with white bread, real butter, and meat portions larger than what father received for his entire week's ration. I fear you will not believe this, but I have gained 12 pounds since my capture. Such testimonials filled thousands of letters that passed through American censors, who were often more amazed by the prisoners' expressions of gratitude than any complaints they might have expected. The scale of American agricultural abundance proved particularly shocking to men raised in a country where resources had always been scarce. A single American wheat field consistently produced 60 bushels per acre, doubling the yields of Germany's most productive farmland. Grain elevators stretched skyward like cathedrals of abundance, each storing enough wheat to feed an entire German city through winter. Even the most remote American farms possessed electric lighting, telephone connections, and mechanized equipment that made German agricultural methods appear centuries behind. Camp records from Fort Robinson, Nebraska, document the profound impact these revelations had on the prisoners. Agricultural supervisor James Mackenzie reported watching German prisoners stand motionless in sugar beet fields for nearly 10 minutes, unable to comprehend that a single farm family could own 640 acres of irrigated land and produce more sugar than their entire village district back home. The working conditions these prisoners experienced revolutionized their understanding of labor relations in ways that would resonate for decades to come. Following Geneva Convention protocols, prisoners earned 80 cents per day for their work, modest by American standards, but often exceeding what many had earned in civilian jobs before the war. More significantly, this introduced them to an economic system where labor received fair compensation, where workers enjoyed legal protections, and where individual effort could translate into personal advancement. The contrast with wartime conditions in Germany was stark and undeniable. While foreign workers in German factories labored under armed guards for starvation rations, German prisoners in America worked standard 8-hour shifts with regular rest periods, protected by international law from dangerous or exploitative conditions. Hans Burkhardt, a railway engineer from Bremen captured in Tunisia, recorded a particularly illuminating experience in his diary. Today, the American foreman asked my opinion about improving the grain loading system. In Germany, no supervisor has ever asked a worker's thoughts. When I suggested a modification to the conveyor belt, they implemented it the next day and thanked me publicly. I am beginning to understand why their farms produce so much. This simple interaction revealed fundamental differences between authoritarian and democratic approaches to human potential and productivity. Agricultural work programs provided the most intensive exposure to American economic and social systems. Laboring alongside American farmers, German prisoners observed techniques that consistently achieved superior yields using equipment more sophisticated than anything they had encountered in Europe. They witnessed farming operations that balanced individual initiative with cooperative marketing, where farmers maintained independence in production decisions while voluntarily joining associations for supply purchases and crop sales. Perhaps most remarkably, farm families regularly invited prisoner workers to share family meals, participate in household activities, and attend local community events. These intimate interactions provided German prisoners with unprecedented glimpses into American family life, revealing social structures built on voluntary cooperation rather than hierarchical command, and economic relationships founded on mutual benefit rather than exploitation or conquest. The contrast with their previous understanding of social organization proved profound and lasting, challenging fundamental assumptions about human nature and social possibilities. Educational opportunities in American prisoner camps extended far beyond basic literacy to include university-level courses, technical training, and cultural enrichment programs. Many camps established formal educational institutions with courses in mathematics, science, literature, and philosophy taught by fellow prisoners who had been university professors, teachers, or professionals in civilian life. These programs operated with intellectual freedom and rigor that many prisoners hadn't experienced since youth, before Nazi ideology restricted academic inquiry and limited access to diverse information sources. Camp libraries contained thousands of books banned in Nazi Germany, including works by Jewish authors, democratic philosophers, and critics of totalitarian systems. For many prisoners, this represented their first opportunity to read authors like Heinrich Heine, Lion Feuchtwanger, and Thomas Mann, whose books had been burned in Nazi ceremonies. The camp newspaper Der Ruf became a forum for exploring democratic ideas and practicing journalistic freedom. Unlike Nazi Germany's controlled press, Der Ruf encouraged open debate and published diverse viewpoints, allowing many contributors to discover talents for writing and political analysis they had never been able to develop under Nazi restrictions. Religious freedom in American camps provided opportunities for spiritual growth that many had been denied during the war years. Unlike Nazi Germany, where religious expression faced increasing restrictions, American camps allowed prisoners to practice their faith freely and organize their own religious communities. Local churches frequently organized special programs for prisoner camps, inviting prisoners to participate in religious services and holiday celebrations that bridged cultural and national divides. Christmas celebrations in American prisoner camps became particularly powerful symbols of cultural transformation. American communities organized elaborate Christmas parties for German prisoners, complete with decorated trees, traditional foods, and carefully wrapped gifts from local families. At Camp Hearn in Texas, prisoner Wilhelm Schmidt wrote, "American children sang Silent Night in German for us. Many of my comrades wept openly. How can we call these people our enemies when they show such kindness to prisoners who fought against their sons?" The human dimension of this experience proved even more transformative than the material abundance that initially shocked the prisoners. German prisoners quickly discovered that their American guards and the civilians they encountered in work settings treated them not as subhuman enemies, but as individuals deserving of basic respect and dignity. American farmers who employed prisoner labor through official work programs frequently invited prisoners to share meals with their families, taught them English during breaks, and treated them as temporary members of their communities rather than dangerous enemies to be feared and contained. The medical care available to German prisoners demonstrated American commitment to human dignity and professional ethics in ways that many found difficult to reconcile with Nazi propaganda about American callousness. German prisoners received the same medical treatment as American soldiers, with access to modern hospitals, skilled physicians, and medications often superior to those available in wartime Germany. The dental care proved particularly noteworthy, as many prisoners had suffered untreated dental problems during military service, yet found themselves receiving care that exceeded what they might have expected as civilians in peacetime Germany. The interaction between German prisoners and American women challenged Nazi ideological assumptions about gender roles in democratic society in profound ways. German prisoners working in American communities encountered women operating businesses, participating in local government, attending universities, and enjoying social freedoms unknown in Nazi Germany. These encounters often began in work settings where prisoners met American women serving as supervisors, co-workers, or business owners in agricultural and manufacturing operations, completely overturning their preconceptions about the weakness of democratic societies. The escape statistics from American prisoner camps revealed the depth of this transformation in stark numerical terms that spoke louder than any propaganda could have. Of the 425,000 German prisoners held in the United States, only 2,222 attempted escape, representing barely 0.52% of the total population. Even more telling were the motivations behind these escape attempts, which rarely involved loyalty to Nazi ideology, but typically cited boredom, adventure-seeking, or worry about family members back in Germany. Georg Gaertner embodied this phenomenon perfectly. Escaping from Camp Deming in New Mexico in September 1945, he chose not to attempt the impossible journey back to Germany, but instead to remain in America under the assumed identity of Dennis Wiles. For 40 years, he lived quietly in various Western states, working ordinary jobs and eventually marrying an American woman who remained unaware of his past. His 1985 decision to surrender to authorities and seek American citizenship represented the completion of a transformation that had begun during his captivity decades earlier. This transformation was neither universal nor without resistance, and American authorities maintained realistic perspectives about the challenges involved. They identified approximately 10% of German prisoners as hardcore Nazi ideologues who actively resisted re-education efforts and sometimes intimidated fellow prisoners who showed enthusiasm for American ideas. These true believers were eventually segregated into special camps like Alva, Oklahoma, where they could not influence other prisoners who were genuinely open to experiencing democratic values firsthand. Local American communities occasionally exhibited hostility toward prisoner camps, with some residents protesting that enemy prisoners received better treatment than many American citizens endured during wartime rationing. Labor unions opposed the use of prisoner workers, arguing it undercut American wages and employment opportunities. Camp censors heavily monitored prisoner correspondence, and some positive testimonials about American treatment may have been influenced by prisoners' desire to avoid punishment or secure favorable treatment. The experience varied significantly by region and camp commandant, with some facilities maintaining strict military discipline with minimal cultural interaction, while others actively encouraged prisoner integration with local communities. African American guards and workers sometimes faced discrimination that German prisoners did not experience, revealing the contradictions within American democratic ideals during this period and complicating the narrative of American moral superiority. The long-term impact of these American experiences resonated through German society for decades following the war's end. Approximately 5,000 former German prisoners eventually immigrated permanently to the United States, representing the ultimate expression of their transformation. These men chose to abandon their homeland and rebuild their lives in the country that had held them as prisoners, bringing families and skills that enriched American communities while providing living testimony to the power of democratic values to win hearts and minds through example rather than force. The leadership roles that former prisoners assumed in post-war West Germany proved equally significant in shaping the future of democratic Europe. These men became business executives, political leaders, educators, and community organizers who helped establish the democratic institutions and market economy that transformed West Germany into a stable, ally, and prosperous society. Their first-hand knowledge of democratic governance and free market principles provided crucial expertise during the critical Reconstruction years when Germany's future political direction remained uncertain and contested. former prisoner Heinrich Alberts, who later became mayor of West Berlin, credited his American captivity with teaching him that democracy was not weakness, but strength, not chaos, but ordered liberty. This sentiment echoed through the testimonies of thousands of former prisoners who returned to Germany as informal ambassadors for democratic values and international cooperation, helping to lay the groundwork for the peaceful resolution of Cold War tensions. The cultural bridges that former prisoners maintained with America created lasting channels for international understanding and cooperation that proved invaluable during the decades of tension that followed. Personal relationships formed in camps facilitated business partnerships, educational exchanges, and diplomatic cooperation that strengthened the German-American alliance throughout the Cold War period. These human connections provided foundations for institutional relationships that proved vital when Europe faced the Soviet threat and needed American protection and support. The transformation of German prisoners of war in American camps represents one of history's most powerful demonstrations of how lived experience can overcome even the most intensive ideological indoctrination. These men discovered that the American society they had been taught to despise offered a compelling alternative to the totalitarian system they had served. Their conversion resulted not from propaganda or coercion, but from the natural human response to experiencing genuine prosperity, individual dignity, and personal freedom in daily life. The 425,000 German prisoners who experienced American captivity became informal ambassadors for democratic values and international cooperation, their testimony about American society helping to counter anti-American propaganda, support democratic reforms in post-war Germany, and contribute to alliance relationships that maintained European peace and prosperity for decades. Their story serves as a powerful reminder that the most effective weapon against hatred and misunderstanding is not military force or propaganda, but the simple demonstration of human dignity and individual freedom that allows people to see for themselves the benefits of democratic society and choose their own path forward toward a more hopeful future.